Hello, everyone. You are watching the Open to Happiness podcast. I am your host, Nicoletta, and today I will be joined by Susan Schwartz, a Jungian analyst from Arizona, USA. We will be talking about the relationship between father absence and happiness today, and I am so thrilled I get a chance to talk about this topic. Hello, Susan, and very welcome to the podcast.
Hello, Nicoletta. Thank you very much.
You're very welcome. So, Susan, our paths intersect really nicely because we both have background in clinical psychology and we both became psychotherapists, and we seem to be focused on the unconscious and the relationship with the self and the others. So I'm really looking forward for this chat. Let's get straight into the topic. You've
Yes.
published a book which is called The Absent Father Effect on Daughters, Father Desire, Father Wounds. Would you like to tell us in the beginning what inspired you to write this book?
Well, actually, many things. Mostly it came from many of the women that I was working with. When asked about their fathers, there was a great deal of absence. Absent emotionally in themselves, absent relationally. The father was either not there, he was emotionally abusive, maybe not abusive, introverted, extroverted, not paying attention. Equally, in the psychological literature, which probably you know as well, until about the last 20 or 30 years, very little written on fathers in relation to their children, much less written on fathers in relation to their daughters, and a very long history of absence of fathers in the family or satisfying or happy relationships with fathers, you could say from Sigmund Freud on. So we have a very long professional history, family history, also culturally. For a very long time, daughters and fathers are supposed to be this sweet romance, we are told. The daughter is a sweetie to the father. The reality is no. So, over the years, this has been unpeeled. So, in many different areas, the absence of the father in the daughter's life or her recognition of how it affected her has been absent.
Mm. I can relate to that. I'll be honest. My father was physically present, but on a psychological and emotional level, he was not available. So yes, I appreciate it. We really need to open this conversation, and we need to talk about our life experience exactly as it is. And now, what is the role of the father in a girl's life, in the woman's life? What would you
Well,
say from your own learnings in psychotherapy?
I think it is a little bit also in relation to what you just said, which is having an emotional presence and being able to be a supportive figure for however she is going to develop in her life. I don't want to say the father is the wisdom one, the guide, the teacher, the authoritarian, because I think that's rather old fashioned.
Mm-hmm.
I think that the issue is he going to be supportive of the daughter and interested, show interest, honor her, appreciate her being, and appreciate her as different from him because she is. And
Mm-hmm.
I think that that in and of itself is actually harder than following the father stereotypes because it makes more choice, it's a wider realm, and it allows the daughter to be able to grow really as strong as she can be.
What is important in your view from the the presence of the father perspective, which is important for the young woman in her development. What does it mean to have a present father?
Well, that is a great question. I would think that the majority of daughters have not had the experience of a present father, and many do not even know how to imagine, very sadly, what that would look like. The absence is so profound, culturally, family, personally, that they is out of their psyche. What do they even imagine him to be? But I believe that he is very important for her intellectual development, her physical development, her pride in her being and her body, also her relational development, and her inner development. So the search for herself in an outer way equally is met in the search for herself in an inner way. So I actually think he affects her body, mind, and soul.
All levels.
Yes, all levels. Yes. And her ability to imagine as well. Beyond. Yes.
Beyond. Imagine at the same time being a woman in a relationship, I would say. And how it's shaping her view, her mindset around relationships and being with a man or being with a partner or having a son one day, mothering a man herself.
Yeah. Yes, equally, that would affect any of the children that she might have. Her sense of herself is influenced not totally by the father, but partially by the father, and also by his unconscious and conscious view of himself and of females and of daughters. So there are, again, many layers.
Yes.
That happen. So what he's not conscious of carrying, he's going to pass on to the daughter. Jung has an amazing amount of quotes on the influence of the unconscious of the parent, the father, onto the children. And if you think, and that's also transgenerationally. So here we've added more layers onto it.
Yes, yes. And we can look at this from so many dimensions, really. It's not a very clear, straight, sort of topic you can just explore quickly within a minute or so.
I agree with you even more that it brings up the question, how come it has been so neglected in the psychological literature? Why have there not been more people, men, women, whomever, exploring the issue? There really have not. I give you an example. I was quite shocked. A Jungian analyst asked me why I would write this book, because there already were 3 written since 1980. 3 books? I said, well, that's exactly why. Only 3. Why is nobody questioning? And are we so unconscious that we don't even bring this up? And many analysts and therapists don't bring up questions about the father, because the daughter will say, well, he was there when I was little and then he went away, or we separated, or I understand him, on and on. But the effect deeply does not get gone into. And who is being unconscious here? The therapist, the person in therapy, the whole setup. We don't puncture into this area. So the father never has to learn to relate healthily to his daughters. There's no expectation.
Yes, yes. It's a cultural cause, I would say. I agree with you. In a way, we have had psychotherapy for a century now. Well, a little bit more with Freud. But from Jung, we have let's say, close to a century.
Yes.
And so many people have been inspired by his writings and by his work in general. Yet,
Yeah.
at the level of the collective consciousness, we are not ready to talk about deeper stuff. We don't open heavier conversations that go deeper within our own psyche and understanding of self, because life is becoming more and more busy and stimulating in the outside world. So there seems to be very little space created to turn within and look inside and start being reflective and talking about what's going on. So we don't have that kind of awareness of self because the school is failing to teach our children. I haven't been taught one lesson about the self or who am I or where I'm coming from or anything that I'm trying to discover now in my own work, because it's needed. I see it in my client work that people have all of these questions, existential questions, and they don't know why they suffer. They don't know why they feel unfulfilled, why they feel lonely, why they feel unwell, why they feel like something is missing. And for a woman to have that father absent, that's kind of shaping the way she's looking at her own existence, isn't it? And she's relating to the world.
Yes. So the absence that I was referring to is physical, emotional, psychological, mental, relational. But what she learns is then to be, so if she catches his absence and internalizes it, then she is going to be absent as well. And what will come in is exactly what you said, the busyness of our world and the avoidance of looking at the sorrow, the grief, the longing, the mourning, the loss of the father, which really would fill the hole inside, becomes even more difficult because it is not promoted in our world to be very depth oriented. There's always a percentage, thank goodness. But by and large, people say, get over it.
Yeah.
Don't look at it. Why are you going into that? Well, because it has a very huge effect, and the effect gets bigger the less we look.
Yes, and it's part of us at the end of the day. Whatever they experienced in life, our parents, it's part of us. It's been somehow transmitted to us through, evolutionary memory, through karmic memory, through genetic memory. So it's always there to a certain level or another. We are them. We have 50% of our father's DNA. So we lived with a father, most of us. So we've learned about life, observing and imitating our fathers. And then we probably created a sense of connection, or we missed to create that sense of connection with that first man in our lives. So how important is that? What did you find when you were researching to write this book? What did you find?
Well, some daughters will, it's interesting. Virginia Woolf is an example, actually, of a daughter who was kind of, again, the sweetie to her father and took on his emotions and what was going on inside of him. It quite affected her. We don't exactly know how, but she wrote some about it. So, as you say, this father, absent, passed on generationally, is going to create an absence inside of her, which is quite a thing to be able to deal with. In relation to what you're saying about the transgenerational issues as well, I think it's something that people tend to see but also ignore at the same time. Because what if there is a huge pileup of absence for years and years and years? And is it then not our, not just responsibility, but opportunity to try to fill that with our own creative self, with our imagination, with doing things differently, and with not just being on the internet all the time, searching for something else, but also taking time to go inside and figure out, how am I like the father who was absent? Because we carry that absence inside of us. Are we absent to ourselves? Do we treat ourselves the way the father treated us? I mean, that's pretty powerful, actually. And as you say, that because it's in the unconscious, sometimes we don't even realize it. It comes through people's dreams, actually, the unconscious and what is going on. So the dreams really tell a great deal. I have a lot of dreams of women in the book, all revealing aspects of themselves in relation to the father who wasn't there appropriately, you could say.
Tell us a little bit more about this, because I know you're focused on dreams in your analysis, and I'd love to find out a little bit more about it. So how does it play out in our dreams? Any kind of lack or loss, I would say, including the absent father
Yes.
archetype.
The absent father archetype, exactly. I'm going to just say brief, two different dreams, just one sentence of one of them. And this one began, it's in the book. The father was like Hitler. That's like huge. And the other one is, she knew she had to take care of her father. Two different dreams. So it's those dreams are going to tell each of the dreamers the situation that's going on unconsciously inside of themselves. Quite shocking. The father is like Hitler. Well, he's going to be a killer. And then the question is, how is he killing her? What is he doing? How dictatorial, patriarchal, horrifying is he inside? And is she in touch with that? So I think that what I would say is that when one is unconscious, I'm really not aware of what's going on inside. The dream symbols ramp themselves up to like a Hitler so that she will pay attention. And in the other dream, she has to take care of her father. What does that mean? Does that mean that she has to discover who he is inside? Does that mean she's been taking care of him psychologically all of her life? And I would ask questions like this so that she and I could work together to figure out what is going on inside of her. And I would just add to that in the dreams as well, because we're both psychotherapists. So, how do we get the projection onto us of the father? So, I get projections, you're like my father. And so, I'm always glad, in a way, even though it's not really positive, I'm glad at least the father comes in the room, because now he's there and he's not so absent.
Yes.
And then we can discuss it. What does that mean? And he becomes not absent, but he becomes very present in the room, in her psyche, between us, with us, relationally. And that will help her realize how she's carried him within herself and how it's affected all of her relationships to herself and others.
So beautiful. So from your experience now working with women that have had an absent father and researching to write this book, what are the key learnings in terms of the impact of this loss that a woman might carry with her through life?
Well, so I'm going to kind of circle around in answering the question. Someone had assumed that the examples in the book were of a certain class and a certain color, ethnicity, and that person, who was also a therapist, was absolutely wrong. The examples in the book are women of all classes, all backgrounds, all ethnicities, not all, but quite a few.
Yeah.
Uh, and however they identified gender-wise, it's across the board. So no transgendered, but otherwise an entire range. And I thought it was quite interesting that this therapist had projected that they were of a certain type. Now, I think that was his project, was a man, his
Mm-hmm.
projection. But I took it as very interesting. And as I thought about it, again, what is the effect? Well, it's across the board, it's very similar. Very similar, no matter what the background, no matter what the country, no matter what the culture or ethnicity, there's an identification with the absence. A lot of people have experienced this. But the other thing is that the experience, some have said, well, all the people on my block didn't have a father, so nobody missed them. However, the person who said this was doing a movie as an adult on Daughters and Fathers. So you see the absence
Yes.
was causing creativity. And the absence, I believe, because as you had said a bit earlier, it's part of our DNA, the father, will set up a certain longing inside. It's like a chip inside of us. It's always there. If you don't have it, it's not that you're going to suffer more than somebody else, but your suffering will lead you into yourself and it will have an effect. It's got to. So so you can say all the kids on my block didn't have fathers, but that doesn't mean you don't miss one. Or that doesn't mean you don't search for one or try to find some kind of a
Replacement. Mm-hmm.
oh, absolutely. A replacement might be the therapist or the female therapist. So the replacement can come in many different ways. But I think we just kind of always long for what we didn't have.
Mm. Yeah, I would agree with that. And I had the privilege of working in London for the past 15 years with so many nationalities, with such a diverse, I would say, patient demographics, 49 nationalities. I don't enter the ethnicity and races and all of the other differences that we might want to consider, but I think it's a common struggle for us in the modern world. I don't think it belongs to a certain culture or subculture. Based on my own experience, now obviously everyone can only talk from their own experience, which is subjective, it's limited. That's why it's important to have this dialogue and talk and share experience and learn from each other. So now we know that the absence of the father has an impact on the girl, on the women. We know that it can impact all aspects of her being, that it can leave her with a longing, with a loss, with an experience that it makes her somehow feel perhaps unequipped to face life and relationships in particular. What are we doing now in terms of healing, in terms of doing that reparation that is necessary for us in the therapy room?
Well, I think there's something, as you were talking, I was thinking about the Jungian concept of the negative father complex. So the negative father complex, it would mean that that father complex is holding a lot of energy, as in repressing her energy or repressing her life or narrowing it down. As she understands what that father complex is inside of her, like in the two dreams that I had said, the father is Hitler, and the other one of she's supposed to take care of him. As she would understand what that means on many different levels, the energy is released from the complex to be used in a creative way. How will she use it creatively? So many ways. I also in the book used many quotes and examples of women who were highly creative. I mentioned Virginia Woolf, Sylvia Plath, Adrienne Rich, women of all eras who are very creative. They use the energy that is released in order to be able to grow. So there is the positive of it. I also think that the more we understand what's going on inside, the more energy is released. And I think that happens in the dynamics of analysis and therapy. Releases energy. You know, people will now they can take care of their body. Now they can take care of themselves. Now they can have some kind of a goal. Not that one has to have goals in life, but or huge achievements, but they will feel internally satisfied and fulfilled. And that gives an internal contentment, peace, a smoother way of being able to find what is going to be exciting for oneself. Sadly, many women who have that negative father complex are lacking self enthusiasm. So, as the energy is released, they then will be able to gain their enthusiasm, their hope, also throughout life. Because the other problem with the absent father is the woman is not encouraged to love her beauty, her looks, her body, her intellect, her way of being throughout her entire life. I mean, the myth is then she's supposed to stay 20 somehow, and that's it. But that, I think, is also means that one is contained in a negative father complex and cannot grow into the fullness of who she is through her entire life. So there's another effect of the absent father if she doesn't get the encouragement for her being, and she can develop it. And she develops it in therapy is one of the ways, I think.
Yes, yes, so important because the father figure comes back in a woman's life in so many aspects of her life. I mean, you can have a work colleague, you can have a friend that is a male, you can have a boss, you can have, I don't know, you relate to the cashier at the supermarket in a way or another, you know, you have neighbors in the larger community. The father figure can show up in so many ways, and there is room, I would feel there is space and room for reparation all the time, for reconnection with that absent father that hasn't been physically in the years when the woman has been developing. I wonder if you feel that there are very creative ways nowadays in our very giving, I would say, a therapeutic space, which is so generous these days with so many modalities available and so many creative ways of working with a client in this therapy room. I wonder if you feel that we now have more tools to enable our clients, to lend to our clients, to start that journey of self-discovery and healing and grow into the people that they want to be, so they don't feel that any lack from their past, from their early years of life, needs to be carried through their adult life as something that is missing completely, and it can be replaced or it can be nurtured in a way or another. What do you feel about
Well,
this?
yes, I wrote the book actually on quite a negative side of the father, but it carries the hope of the reparation. Uh, One of the other analysts that I mentioned in the book is Andre Green, who speaks about the dead father effect, the dead mother effect, dead father effect, and absence. And the issue is the absence is there. How will we fill it? So it's not just, you don't just stop at absence. You go absence, and how will that absence be filled? And what do I want to fill it with? I think in the therapy room, it also depends on the awareness of the therapist.
Yep.
I've spoken to therapists and been surprised several who were also surprised that they realized they didn't talk about the father. So again, so unconscious in cultures and in our training that there's not a mention, and
Yeah.
then forget to ask. So it's our responsibility to retain awareness and consciousness so we can be there with whatever modalities are our preference to help people, be with people, not help them, be with them to grow into another place. Because I think we change in our work as well. And that's our
Yes.
responsibility. So then we also are filling absence with presence. And our responsibility, obligation, duty, opportunity to make something different happen for ourselves and future generations. Because
Oh, yes.
we have an effect. I mean, when I said transgenerational, I was speaking about the generations behind, but I also mean generations ahead. I,
Yes.
I
So,
just,
yes, absolutely. I look into the transgenerational trauma a lot myself because it's very present in my clinical work. I feel that in a way our parents, our fathers have been absent because their fathers have been absent and so on. And it goes centuries and centuries into the history of humanity. It's not something that just happened with our fathers. I mean, mine or yours or other generations. But I think as a mother of a 32-year-old son, I can see how that is becoming now more clear in my own analysis, in my own work, because you mentioned different therapists working differently. I mean, we are all humans. We've been obviously shaped in the same kind of world. Before we put the therapist hat, we are still, just human beings that maybe have had to a level or another an absent father or an absent mother or anyone significant in their entourage being absent. So I can see how that is being passed on to the next generations. Some unconscious symbols that I probably passed on to my son, and we're talking about it now and again. And he's inspiring me a lot in my work. Hopefully that one day when I publish my own book, I will be able to share a bit more about what it's been for me like to go through this experience and how I lend it somehow to my son. So it's a beautiful, beautiful work that you're doing there. Now, how can we help the listeners that maybe find themselves in this kind of category of women that have had, in a way or another, an absent father, whether on a physical level, on emotional, psychological, or any other kind of level, supportive level? How can we help them? How can we encourage them, empower them to start their journey within, to start their inner work, to start working with themselves, to get to know themselves better, understand themselves better, do the repairing that they have to do, reparent themselves if they need to, because some people might not even have their fathers alive to be able to handle that conversation, maybe go and use that opportunity of meeting face to face to have some adult to adult chats. Although they sometimes hit a wall, they don't necessarily happen in the way we expect them to do, because everyone is on a different kind of vibration or a different level of consciousness. And with my father's generation, for example, as a boomer, it's unlikely that we can go deeper than we can go so far. So how can we empower then women to start their work on this and maybe improve their lives, enhance their lives, the way they experience lives within themselves and in relationships with others?
well, actually, you mentioned many of the points that we would want to encourage people to look at. But I also meant relationally with themselves, with others. I don't know that one has to really talk with the father, because some fathers, whether they are alive or dead or gone, there wouldn't really be a discussion. but there's an internal learning that can take place. I think there's something about taking oneself very seriously, writing dreams down, having a journal, talking with partners, talking with very close friends, and maybe some people will decide to go into therapy themselves to really go deeper, because you can't go, you get to limit with a friend or a partner, but to really to honor themselves and the suffering that they have gone through and the pain, and to be able to let go through it and let go of it, not quickly, but examine it and find the gems in themselves. Because I think that's the point of the therapy as well, is to find the gems of who they are. I also think there is something about being very attentive to one's body. And I mention this quite a bit in the book, but also I always do anyway in my work, because I think that people assume therapy is in your mind. Well, it is, but it is also in your body. So I think that the attention to one's body, as well as honoring the resistance to self care, is very important. So once you focus on yourself, body, mind, and soul, you're going to come up against the resistance, the places that feel difficult, and the places that are possible to work on. So all of these areas, we wake up feeling a certain way. Just being aware of the first 30 seconds of each day that we wake up will heighten the awareness of, so what do I want? How do I want to explore this? And anyway, if people are listening to the podcast, they're probably anyway into this realization of where was he, where am I, and how do I carry him inside of me, and what do I want to create from this?
Yes, wonderful. And now, as we are approaching the end, I don't want to miss this. I think this is very important. How does the absent father figure plays out in the couple relationship between a woman and a man? What have you noticed? What are the most important facets of this?
So, again, as we were speaking, many layers. So, is she acting in the relationship like her absent father? And if she, externally to her partner, also to herself, is he or she, is the partner reenacting the absent father? Is there something between the two of them that is like the absent father? In all situations, there will be loss of energy, loss of love, loss of enthusiasm, loss of expressiveness. And if people can catch where they are hesitant, where they repress themselves and start to express, the relationship will blossom. So it's like, how is one naturally oneself, or how is one carrying the overlay of absence, which would be then crushing a relationship? It's very difficult to
It
face
is.
this. However, it is so rewarding. Even the tiniest little steps become very rewarding. And then as you get that reward, you feel you have the energy to go on. So it's a very serious effect on relationships. Yes.
Yes, I see it as well in the couple work that I'm doing, sometimes even with individual therapy with clients themselves, talking about their experience with their husbands or partners. And I always, because now we're talking about Jung a lot, I always draw attention onto what irritates them into their partners, because that goes back to a much deeper understanding of themselves, isn't it? It says a lot about who we really are, how the relationship is developing and acting.
And one other thing, that what you can see in the relationship, what the person learned from watching the parents, and reenacting the places that they did not really like. And this is the shocker, but that causes self-reflection, self-realization, and oh my goodness, I better do something about it. So it can be very helpful.
It can be, because it's coming on our path all the time with a message. Hey, I'm here, attend me. I need your attention. So stop from what you're doing and just look into this. And the bad part is that sometimes, despite the fact that we have the same kind of experience coming over and over again, bringing a lot of hurt and pain, we don't really stop to look into that. So we don't have that kind of habit of taking a little bit of a break and analyzing what's going on and reflecting on things and learning the lessons, isn't it?
Yes, that's where I think that the process of psychotherapy and analysis teaches and gives gives the experience of realization, what to do with the realization, how to enliven it, how to use it, how to deal with the pain, and how to go beyond the pain into joy and into pleasure and into having a full life. Some people have learned from too much absence to just settle. And I believe that therapy and analysis is don't just settle. Go for all that you want in your life so you can get free of whatever it is that's holding you back.
Yes, we can definitely reach that liberation if we work towards it. There's no doubt about it. To stay with Jung now, well, he said it very clearly. I'm not what happened to me. I am what I decide to become, or what I want to become myself. So there is a lot of empowerment, though. It's so giving. Now, towards the end, thank you so much. I can't imagine it's gone so quickly. I wish I could maybe talk a little bit more. Maybe we can do it again, because this is a too broad conversation just to have it within a single podcast. But towards the end now, Susan, tell us, tell me and the listeners, the ones watching this, what are your 3 tips in terms of working with the absent father figure and enhancing our lives with or without the help of therapy?
How to enhance one's life. You know what? I also believe that through literature, through videos, movies, YouTube, podcasts, we enrich our life through opening our mind and learning, opening our bodies as well, respecting who we are, and realizing that it is a process that is well worth the process. Even though some days it feels too hard, that is true, but keep going. With therapy or not, keep going on your path, keep going on finding more and more information about what you feel doesn't work and what does work, where all of the potential lies as well, and learn to enhance that also.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. I would say the same. It's important to take a little bit of time and understand what happened, because otherwise there's no sense of acceptance. It's quite hard. And then you keep the past trapped in you, and that needs to be released. We need to let it go and surrender to what was and what is, and then gradually maybe learn a little bit more and assign some meaning to that absence of the father into our lives, because that's the only way we can forgive what was lacking and we can heal and transform ourselves inside, isn't it?
Absolutely. I totally agree with you. Well said. And really what you're saying as well is, again, out of the absence comes fullness if you work at it and look at it and honor it.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Great. Thank you so much, Susan. It's been fantastic chatting with you. Let's tell the ones watching and listening, where can they grab your book and find out a little bit more about you and your work?
Yes. My website is Susan Schwartz. It's SCHWARTZ phd.com. There's some sample pages of the book on the website. You can get the book from Routledge, Amazon, Karnak, bunches of book sites on the internet, and I hope that people learn from it and enjoy.
Thank you. Thank you for writing the book. Thank you for taking the time to be here and share your wisdom with us. Big thanks to all of you listening, and many thanks to you, Susan, for everything you're doing for the humanity.
Thank you. Thank you as well.
That's it for now. Until next time, we are wishing you all good health and happiness.